Hey, welcome everyone to a very special edition of the Story Trading Weekly Meetup. We have made a ton of money in our community. Air just exploded, up 500% since it's been chosen as a VIP pick. So we got lots to discuss there. First, a quick disclaimer: Story Trading is not an investment advisor. Investing in securities involves significant risk of loss. This presentation is being recorded. Part or in whole may be posted on social media. So those who are not familiar, what's in a story trade? Story trading is understanding market pricing, AKA the story behind the trade, through the lens of the four pillars of fundamentals, catalyst, sentiment, and technicals. We have an app coming out very, very soon, perhaps even this week. For people who are signed the NDA, we'll get a quick sneak peek at that. Our app is going to be the place to discover, collaborate, and validate market moving information through crowdsourced research and social collaboration. You can sign up to get onto that wait list at StoryTrading.com. So we're going to talk about VIP picks when we do have presentations at our weekly meetup. Any new ideas we track, we post them up on our website as VIP picks. That's where you're going to find Air Test Systems, which was chosen by Ashleigh in March, along with 49 other picks. As a whole, those 50 or so picks have dramatically outperformed the market. So I encourage everyone to go to StoryTrading.com and click on VIP picks.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. Welcome aboard. You're the hero, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been a group effort, putting everything together. But happy to keep names in front of people. And it's sort of prudent timing for TPCS in terms of keeping a name in front of people when things are changing and improving. And obviously, this is a Mark Gomes pick that the story really resonated with me. And so, I presented it last year in May. They had some potential pending acquisition where we thought they would actually be acquired potentially last summer, and that didn't work out. So. But since then, they kind of flipped it on us, and 5 months later, in October, Tech Precision decided they were going to buy Stadco, and that recently closed about a month ago. And in 3 days, they have a conference call with investors to go over the details of that transaction, which is really nice, actually, because it's anyone who's involved in the story knows that they don't provide much detail on their conference calls when they're discussing financials, but one that they have, scheduled themselves. I kind of expect them to speak a little bit more than they maybe would on a normal earnings call. So otherwise, what's the point of having it?
So yeah, go ahead.
It looks like they picked up the company relatively cheap. They issued 1.5 million shares to the previous management, I believe, paid some back rent, took over a loan. The prior lender took a little bit of a haircut on that, and then they financed a chunk with doing a pipe deal with some private investors for 3.2 million shares. And then there was a little bit of extra debt. They gave out 600,000 shares and then another 100,000. So between that, maybe 5-6 million shares, something in that range, which is actually, I haven't done the math, is probably about 20% dilution. Mark can probably correct me on that, but didn't really have to do the math because it really doubles the revenue opportunity of the company compared to what they're doing right now. So that level of dilution is quite reasonable. And then rereading back through the PR that announced the closing of that transaction last week, there's a lot to be optimistic about in this acquisition. So I'm expecting the call to be quite bullish this week. A few things that stand out is I really got the sense from the PR that there is as much, if not more, opportunity with Stadco than at Ranor, which is Tech Precision's subsidiary doing the defense work on the submarines. And also they have their hands in a number of projects too. So you're kind of spreading things out as well, being able to work on a number of different programs. They've got some good equipment, and I think they got maybe 160, 100 something in that range number of employees that came over, kind of at a time when labor is short, and getting quality people in this field is not easy to do. And so there's some value in acquiring those employees as well, in addition to the equipment and the relationships with those sort of defense contractors. And what the Stadco primarily deals with helicopters. And actually about 5 or 6 days before TPCS, and I don't know if the timing is related, but 5 days before they announced they're going to buy them, Sikorsky announced that they were going to add more King Stallion helicopters with a new U.S. contract for the Navy. Stadco, I believe, works on sort of the transmission and the gear shift for those helicopters. I could go into more detail on some of the history of Stadco, but basically they were in a poor financial position with contracts from the military they kind of had to take, and now being in a stronger financial position, they can get better long-term contracts from the military than they would have had to before, in a nutshell.
So, Ashleigh, I want to ask you this, was it Wednesday or Thursday, the conference call?
Wednesday.
Okay, so this Wednesday, are there any potential negative surprises that can happen? And the reason I ask is this: one of the things that dissuade me from this stock more than anything else is that they're not the opacity, right? It's very opaque what they do. You go to their website's like a piece of shit. Sorry, excuse my language, right? You listen to a conference call and you can't understand anything. They're not telling you anything. And then in terms of channel checks and things like that, you really can't do it, right? So it's a very dry story. It takes a particular type of mindset and person to go in and just purely look at the numbers and figure out, hey, this is undervalued or overvalued. But I just worry that there's something that can always drop, something they're not telling you because they haven't been transparent with us, right? So is there anything about this acquisition that they haven't been transparent with us on that can be a surprise negative hit on this conference call Wednesday?
Probably, yeah. I don't know. There's nothing that really comes to mind. We kind of already know what they paid for them. I mean, one of the things that surprised. So what happened previously is the company went private, and then the former CEO and COO took it public again with a group, and didn't realize how bad shape the company really was in, and that sort of kind of made it put them in a little bit of a financial mess that it was hard for them to get out of. The only thing I could think is maybe. But then again, it's sort of like if that happened once, it's hard to imagine that would happen a second time. And so I would imagine there's been a lot of transparency between the current CEO and COO of Stadco with them and Alex Shen and Tech Precision Management. They've probably been a lot more open about it, especially since the CEO and the COO are going to stay on and run Stadco from the West Coast with oversight from Tech Precision. So I think that risk is probably not there. So I really don't think so. I think the big reason they always cite on the conference calls for being opaque is just that they're for competitive reasons and because they work for the military. And I'm sort of convinced, having listened to calls from Graham and other defense companies that offer a lot more information, that it's probably more just a personality and maybe in their nature to be that way, and it's not so much an indication that there's something wrong with the company. But clearly, if they've gone out of their way to say we're hosting a call, we want to tell you something, if they're tight-lipped on that call, I think that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think it's promising that they're scheduling a call at all.
Yeah, if I can jump in on that, I can provide some color and light from the contacts I have in the industry on this. Number one, from what I hear, I can't say from who, but people close to the matter. Pressure has been increased upon Alex from its major shareholders, its board of directors, and other major influencers of the company to become a little bit more investor friendly. Let's make no mistake, and this is something that I really like about the company. As I said earlier, you have to connect the dots and take a leap of faith, okay? But this company has been kind of off the hook in terms of being opaque, to Ashleigh's point. But from what I've heard, that is changing. And if you read the press release for the acquisition, you'll see it's probably the most open and bullish press release they've put out in years, okay? So the first sign is there as far as that goes. Boom. As far as can anything go wrong between here and then, I would highly doubt it. Stadco was on the brink of bankruptcy, okay? This is a death spiral that manufacturing companies can go into, because once you get into a certain state of affairs in your business, nobody will want to do business with you, because you could go out of business before you deliver what the person ordered. You know, so if you heard that some company was about to go out of business, you wouldn't order their product from Amazon if it was a 1 month wait for that product, because at the end of that 1 month, you might find out they're out of business and you're not getting your product, and good luck getting your money, because that was money that they collected, and good luck getting it back. Viability is important, and it's particularly important when you're talking about something as sensitive as the military. Being bought by Tech Precision changed all that for Stadco. It's a huge change that was undertaken. Stadco is too small a company for somebody bigger to take out. So Tech Precision was Johnny on the spot, added a few million as part of an offering, as part of the acquisition for good measure. And now what you have is a company that is undeniable viability versus a company that had almost untouchable, horrible viability. This is all good news. Alex is not the kind of person, look, that press release said enough. There would be no reason for Alex to come out and talk about this any further until the next conference call. We know Alex, that's what he would do. And actually say on the conference call, we're not talking about the Stadco acquisition, but are actually doing a special call for that. So I think it's kind of, I think it would be unnecessary worrying to wonder if something could go wrong on this call. And we could talk about the potential for the company, but if you want, but the one thing I'll kind of preface with this is, if you want an idea of whether or not they are getting orders, right? They're opaque. We don't see that. There's not the kind of transparency that we get in an air, right? But this is a very sexy story, because China, Russia, the submarines, the tensions between us, that is a geopolitical major thing in the media right now. And how is the US responding to China now having a bigger Navy than us? Russia making submarines that look like they came out of a 007 movie. They're building new subs. They're creating bigger transport vehicles. And those bigger transport vehicles don't fit in the old helicopters. So guess what they got to do? They got to order new helicopters. This is a cyclical era that happens once every 15 years. And for the last 15 years, Tech Precision has been going down, down, down. But now that tide has turned, and there's bipartisan Democrat, Republican support for adding military might because of those geopolitical tensions at a time where our economy is in a state where government typically steps in and spends more money to prop the economy up. This is actually a really sexy story from that perspective, right? So all you have to do, right, and then I'll turn it over to you if you want more details on the operating model and where this thing can go. But all you have to do is understand that my people at one point checked into the capacity of TPCS, and it was somewhere around $40 million was their capacity, their annual revenue capacity. Stadco has been said to be at a similar level of capacity, okay? So you can do the math on that. But here's the rub. Alex Chen is not a risk taker. And we all know that, like, to a laughing degree. But despite having 40 million of capacity, he's out there buying new capacity. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know that they're getting orders. You don't need to see the orders. They are nowhere near capacity and buying new capacity. if you can't figure it out from there, you don't deserve to get rich on the stock.
Mark, you guys said something very interesting, which piqued my interest, is that you think there's a concerted effort to be more investor friendly, right? And
Yeah.
to me, that's a very significant data point because it speaks to the sentiment. I just want to show you, I showed you a tweet earlier of someone who was a very bullish sentiment on air. And now, if you can, is my screen showing here? You guys see this? On Twitter, it says, is TPCS, it's another sentiment issue, is TPS like a real stock? Been reading about it. Some people bullish, website looks a bit weird, very little on what they actually do, right? So this is critical for me because as a story trader, I'm looking for inflection points, right, of the story changing. And part of that story, I think maybe the biggest part of this TPS story is that they haven't been transparent, right? So fundamentally, this thing's really cheap because people like me, I'm watching, I'm sitting there, I don't have a big position because I don't like their website and their IR and they don't do sexy press releases. And I'm like, I don't want to be a part of that, right?
Right.
So if they made a commitment and we know that's going to change, that's an inflection in the sentiment, and that's something that can now unlock the fundamental value. So I'm very intrigued by that. And I look forward to maybe offline discussing a little bit more about what in terms of their commitment to being more investor friendly. That's a very significant development for me.
Yeah. And what I can tell you is they have an investment banker right now, right? Like they weren't doing deals before. They just did a deal. They just did 2 deals. In fact, they acquired a company and they raised money. They have an investment banker. Okay. I know the investment banker, and that investment banker is very well known for pushing their stories out there. They've had some very explosive winners. So there's that. There's the board of directors. There's everything that I'm hearing as far as that goes. And the other thing that I'm hearing is that they are going to uplist at the earliest possible convenience, and that they have all the criteria met except for a $5 stock price, which is easily remedied by some combination of the stock going up and a reverse split. So they uplist, the next thing you know, they could be on the Robinhood app. Next thing you know, you're getting these geopolitical headlines that talk about submarines and helicopters, and these are the guys that do it. And then to your point, all they are is one website upgrade away from solving that issue. That's why I love companies like this, right? Sentiment is something that can turn, and I'm willing to have my money in an undervalued stock and wait for those things to repair.
Are you anticipating more transparency on the conference call or in press releases in terms of their potential and their pipeline?
I think that they will tell us from what I've been told, Alex is being encouraged to say there's a lot of things he can't say. Okay. And the reason he gets ridiculed is not because of what he can't say. It's because he doesn't say everything else. He's being highly encouraged to say everything that he can. So I can't tell you, right, what he's going to say because I'm not inside the company to know what he's not allowed to say. But what I can tell you is he's going to tell us a lot more. And I've known there have been a lot of data points that I've thrown down the company's throat and say, why don't you say this? Why don't you say that? There's no reason. There's nothing stopping you from saying these things that are entirely public. And those are the things that they're being pushed to say more of. Now, you want to talk about 4 pillars and the impact that they can have on a stock. And this is why I'm following, I'm a little bit more of a turn more the story trading way a bit, is that if you do the math on these companies with 40 million in capacity and increasing capacity, there's the potential here for 100 million in total revenue amongst these companies. At 40% gross margins, that's 60 million in cost of goods sold against an SG&A base that only needs to go to, let's say, 10 million, which currently is only 6. So they could increase SG&A by 60-something%, which they don't need to do. They have no need to do it. They don't need salespeople. They get these government contracts and it's done. And they end up with 30% operating margins. All right. I'm not counting on 30% operating margins, but if they even do 20% operating margins, that's $20 million of operating income. Their market cap is less than 60 million right now. If they get a 15 PE on that, that's $300 million. this is a 6-bagger. Why isn't it closer to that 6th bag? Sentiment. And this is what you get.
That's what they
right?
need. We need some sexy PRs.
That's how bad the sentiment is. Sentiment is so bad, the stock is undervalued by like 80%. It's crazy. So kudos to you for that. You know, I paid a lot more attention to that sort of thing. And hey, they seem to be taking, at very least, it's getting better. Is it going to be what we want? You know, they're going to go from 0 to 10. Look, all they have to do is go from 0 to 5 on that good investor relations to get the stock, moving again. And from a technical standpoint, they just broke out of a bullish wedge that had multi-year resistance and broke out of that into a multi-year high. I mean, what's better than that from a technical standpoint? I don't see anything that's holding the stock back from going to $3, $4, or $5 real quick.
Yep, I see those technicals with you, and I think there's a lot of anticipation the sentiment will turn with the conference call on Wednesday. So I'll be watching that closely along with everyone else. We're up against the clock, so we're going to wrap up the recorded section here. I want to remind everyone you can collaborate on TPCS at the TPCS Research Group if you're a StoryTrading VIP member. You can check out our future events. There's always some interesting events coming up over on our website. And please follow us at StoryTrading on Twitter and YouTube. Your collaboration really helps us get the word out. So with that, we're going to stop the recording here and go into our overtime session, some Q&A and trade of the week.